Hi, my name is Matt Ashby and I'm one of the lecturers here at UCL and I teach on the BSc in Crime and Security Science. And in this video, I'm going to give you some information about our course. So the first question I should probably try and answer is why would you want to study crime science? And this is a course that we've built from the ground up to help students get the skills and the knowledge that they need to try to go out and solve crime and security problems of different descriptions. So in thinking about what do crime scientists do, we try to help in all sorts of ways to look at different crime and security problems. So some of the things that we do in our department, for example, we look at how can we most effectively stop online fraud against older people? How can we spot future crime problems before they happen? How can we help police to investigate crimes like international human trafficking? We help design products that are harder for people to steal or break into. We work on trying to find the best ways to stop problems like knife crime. And we do things like try to predict where terrorist attacks are most likely to happen. And we're slightly different from a traditional criminology program. So if a criminology program is going to be thinking about crime and security problems, and it's going to be using ideas from disciplines like law and psychology and sociology to deal with those problems. What we do and how crime science is different is that we expand the domains that we are drawing ideas from to take ideas from things like engineering and maths, history and political science, economics, geography and computer science. And we have people in our department that come from all of those backgrounds and they approach crime and security problems from different perspectives, and that helps them come up with different solutions that we perhaps probably wouldn't have thought of if we were just using ideas from traditional criminology. So our course is a 3-year full-time undergraduate program. So in the first year, students study 8 compulsory modules. That's 4 modules in the first term and then 4 modules in the second term. And each of these modules is designed to give you an introduction to one of these domains that we are using to help us deal with crime problems. And some of these might be familiar to you depending on what you've studied previously. So if you've done A-level psychology, for example, if you're studying in the UK, then the psychology of crime module is probably going to be quite familiar to you. But if you've done a different set of subjects before you come to us, then that might be quite a challenging module that you find quite a long way outside your comfort zone. Whereas somebody that's comfortable with psychology might find the programming module more challenging for them. And so what we find is that different modules challenge different students in different ways. But by the end of that first year, all of the students that we have this range of skills that they can then build on in the second and third year. Moving on into the second year, so it's 8 more modules, 4 in the first term and 4 in the second term. And 5 of those modules, the lighter coloured ones, are compulsory. And those are, again, sort of extending your knowledge on things like using research to work out how to most effectively solve crime problems, what works and what doesn't work, using situational crime prevention techniques, thinking about cybercrime and how that's developing and changing and the challenges that poses. But we've also in this second year got 3 optional modules, and that allows students to tailor the degree to the specific things that they're interested in. And I'll give some examples of those optional modules in a minute. You can see that 2 of those optional modules in the second year, alternatively, can be a work placement. And that's something that a lot of our students find really useful, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. Moving into the third year then, you can see we've got 3 things going on here. Some more compulsory module, these are more advanced at this point. 3 more opportunities to take options, and those are options both from within our department and from across the rest of the university. And then a research project, and the research project is again something students really like because they can choose the topic that they're interested in. Maybe it's a topic that they found really interesting in one of their second year modules, or maybe it's the topic that they really want to focus on in finding a job. And so what our students do is they pick a subject We find them a supervisor who's an expert in that area who can work with them, and then they use real-world data to answer a particular question. And often we find that students do really well in that module, in that research project, because they are really interested in, because they've been able to choose exactly what they want to do. So these are some examples of the optional modules that we offer. Some of these are from within our department and some of them are from other departments at UCL. Now, one thing about the optional modules is that they change over time. We introduce new modules as new things come up. So as AI develops or as cybercrime develops, we introduce new modules to look at those sorts of issues. And so this list of modules is subject to change. And what we also do is we allow students, if they want to take a module that's not on this list, and they come to us and say, and they explain why it's important to their career progress and the degree that they want to put together, then we very often work with students to take other modules as well. So how do we teach on our course? Well, we have traditional university lectures, as you'd expect on almost all university courses. And this is where a member of staff who's an expert in a particular topic comes in and talks about particular ideas, introduces new concepts to students. And they are often paired, or almost always paired, with something like a tutorial where students are discussing a particular problem or going over an idea in more detail. And we use those because we know that students understand ideas and get skills in much more detail if they can discuss the issues and interact with those issues, use them to apply them to particular problems, rather than if they're just listening about them in a lecture. So we find that tutorials and also workshops, computer-based workshops, which are often practical in nature, so you might be analysing some crime data, for example. One of the things that we'll teach you in this degree is to program in 2 different programming languages so that you can do lots of different types of data analysis. We use these to reinforce the ideas that are introduced in the lectures to make sure that students have a really good understanding of them. We also do various practical activities. So this is 2 of our recent students who are presenting their work that they've done on a particular topic, and that gives them some skills that are going to be really useful to them after they graduate when it comes to presenting to colleagues, for example, in a business environment, and also in building their confidence in standing up and speaking. And then we also have a variety of external speakers who come in. So this is somebody who's come in from BAE Systems. This is actually another graduate of ours who's come in and talks about her job and what she does and how she uses different analysis techniques to help customers with digital intelligence. And then we also have a variety of field trips throughout the course. So this is our current first-year students visiting the Met Police Training Centre to find out about specialist investigation techniques that police use, crime scene examination techniques, and so on. So let's look at a typical week on one of the modules, just as an example. So a typical week will start with the students preparing ahead of the lecture, and that might be 2 hours of work. And what that will be will vary. So we might ask you to read a chapter from a book that introduces some ideas. We might ask you to go out and find an example of how a particular security technology, like CCTV, is being used around the campus. There's all sorts of things we might ask you to do. We'll then have the lecture that will introduce the main ideas for that week. The students will then go away, write up their notes for that lecture and prepare for the tutorial, and that will probably take another 2 or 3 hours. We then have the tutorial, it's normally an hour each week, where we go through the ideas in more detail, and students are leading that discussion normally. It's normally student-led rather than lecturer-led. And then after that, students will have some more notes to write up. And this is for one module. You take 4 modules at a time, so you'd be doing this across 4 different modules within each week. One other thing that we've worked very hard to do on this course is to make sure that our assessments aren't just essays and exams. We use assessments to help students develop the skills that they're going to need after they graduate, because it's very likely that after students graduate, they won't write many essays, but they are probably going to be writing reports for their boss or giving presentations or that sort of thing. So as well as exams and essays, we use all sorts of other types of assessments. So this photo here, for example, this shows one of our current second year students down at the Home Office, the headquarters of the Interior Ministry here in the UK. All of our students go down there having done research to identify a new crime problem that's emerging right now because of changes in technology, and then they present that work to experts from the Home Office, and they have discussions with those experts about what the government is doing right now to try to fix those problems that come up from new technology. We do quite a few presentations because we know that that's something that students will need to do a lot in a lot of jobs after they graduate. This is students the group that came first in our presentations last term. So they've all got a prize. What they had to do there was they were given a crime problem and they had to analyse that problem and come up with a solution that would stop that crime from happening. And this is the team that came up with the best solution this year. And then this is a still from a video that students, our current third year students, have produced. They were asked to look at a particular investigative technique. So this student's chosen CCTV cameras and find an expert and interview an expert to find out how effective that technique is. So we do all of these things to make assessments more interesting and more useful in building students' skills. So I talked a little bit about the work placement previously. So the work placement takes place in the second year, either over one term or over the whole year. It's competitive, so students have to apply for particular placements with organisations. We find the placements and we give a list of placements, but students are then interviewed by those organisations. And the reason why they go through that process is because the organisations are getting those students to solve real world problems that they're facing. So they need students who are capable of helping them solve genuine problems. This isn't something that we've made up for students to learn on. And this isn't the sort of work placement where students are going off and doing photocopying, for example. So some examples of recent things that students have done on their work placements has been things like analysing threatening letters sent to athletes, or evaluating how good domestic violence victim support is, or helping the developers of a new housing block work out what crime risks might be introduced by how they were building it. And we do work placements with a variety of different organisations. These are some of the organisations that we've done work placements with in recent years. This changes every year because it depends what organisations have problems that they want us to help them solve. And what a lot of students do is that when they find that when they graduate, it's not at all unusual for students to be offered jobs with the organisations that they did the work placement with, because that organisation already knows that student's good, they're capable of showing up and doing work that helps that agency, that organisation achieve its goals. So admissions requirements for the programme. So our standard requirements for A-level are AAB or higher, or if you're doing the IB diploma, 36 points or more. We do have a scheme called Access UCL for applicants from the UK who come from places where not many people go to university, or who are from some other groups that are underrepresented at university, like care leavers. And if you're eligible for that, then your offer to come onto the course would be different. We also require English at what we call UCL level 3, so that depends on what English language test you've done, but if you've done IELTS, for example, that requires a score of 7.0 on all 4 elements. If you've done a different language test, or if you think you might be eligible for the Access UCL scheme, or if you've got different qualifications, then if you go to our website shown on the screen, then that will give you details of exactly what all the entry requirements are for different qualifications and different English tests. So where do our graduates go next? Well, they go to lots of organisations, some of them in the public sector, so police forces like the Metropolitan Police and the City of London Police here in London, other government agencies like the Security Service, MI5, or the Ministry of Justice. Big companies like PwC and Ernst & Young, they have specialist teams looking at security analysis for things like fraud. Banks like UBS, as well as more specialist companies like Bureau Happold, who have security teams to help with big engineering projects and so on. So our graduates often go into a really wide range of really good quality jobs where they're doing really interesting work that allows them to really make a difference, be it in the public sector or the private sector. So thanks very much for your time, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you if you need more information.